And we'll just kind of walk through these steps together in a much more enjoyable subject. Number one, when a believer dies, their spirit immediately goes to be with the Lord. Look at Philippians chapter 1, verses 21 through 23. For me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live on in the flesh, this will mean fruit from my labor. Yet what I shall choose I cannot tell, for I am hard pressed to be between the two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Paul was absolutely certain that when he passed from this life, he would be with Jesus. Now, this argues against the idea that some people put forth, the idea of what sometimes people call soul sleep. We mentioned that just briefly in the first session. I'll just mention it again. It's the idea that when a person, a believer dies, or they may even apply it to an unbeliever, but let's just talk about it in terms of a believer. When a believer dies, their being goes into some kind of suspended animation, where they just sleep in the ground, and then they awake at the resurrection, and their existence continues on with God. This is fundamentally based in a terrible misunderstanding. I mean, I have very little way to explain this, of a biblical euphemism for death. You know what a euphemism is? A euphemism is a softer, more polite way of speaking of something. Somebody's not crazy, they're eclectic. You know, that kind of thing. So a euphemism is a softer way of speaking of something like that. Well, we do this all the time in speaking of death. Don't we often? We say, well, that person passed. That person went to be with Jesus. We just kind of have this interior braking system that makes us more cautious about just saying, well, they died. You know, and so with that, well, the Bible is the same way. And so there are places where it talks about believers who have slept. They sleep. And this is just a euphemism for death. You don't have to build a doctrine out of a euphemism. It's just speaking of death in a kinder way. In no way should we latch onto the idea of soul sleep or some kind of suspended animation. No, as Paul says, look here in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 6, 7, and 8. So we are always confident, knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident, yes, well pleased, to be absent from the body and to be present from the Lord, or present with, not present from, present with the Lord, present from the Lord. That would be a bad doctrine. No, present with the Lord.